Good afternoon. I'm Mark Asta, the Interim Dean of Berkeley Engineering, and it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you today to our View from the Top. This is a speaker series which gives the college community a chance to hear from thought leaders in business, technology, the arts, public service, and beyond. Before continuing, I'd like to recognize the pioneers and engineering members for co-hosting today's event with us and for guarding the food out there. Thank you. So now I have the great honor of welcoming Rear Admiral Richard Meyer. He's Deputy Commander of the U.S. Third Fleet and, very importantly for us, a Berkeley Engineering alum. He earned his bachelor's and master's degrees here in mechanical engineering. While a student here, he was a member of the Tau Beta Pi Engineering Honor Society, which recognizes engineering students who have shown a history of academic achievement, as well as a commitment to personal and professional integrity. When he completed his undergraduate studies, he did so with highest honors. His impressive track record continued as a distinguished graduate of multiple military education programs. Admiral Meyer began his Navy career after getting his MS degree here at Berkeley, serving as an officer aboard the nuclear submarine USS Portsmouth. He did this for 3 years before returning to UC Berkeley to serve as an adjunct assistant professor of naval science and Navy ROTC instructor. In 2000, he transitioned to the Navy Reserve, and along the way, he earned an MBA with high distinction at the University of Michigan. I think you'll notice a pattern here of high academic achievement. In the Reserve, he held numerous key leadership roles in submarine operations, engineering, emergency preparedness. He also was able to pursue positions in industry, working in areas such as nuclear power and operational improvement. Throughout his career, Admiral Meyer has earned many awards, including the Legion of Merit. And he's been recognized by as a top graduate in both nuclear power and submarine officer training. I'm really just scratching the surface here, but I want to make sure we leave enough time to hear from our guest directly. So please join me in giving a warm Berkeley welcome to Admiral Richard Meyer.
Thanks, Dean Astor. I really appreciate the very kind remarks and introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, good afternoon. Yay. That's the audience participation part. So, as mentioned, I'm Rear Admiral Rich Meyer, the Deputy Commander at U.S. Third Fleet, and I am actually thrilled and honored to be with you all here today, back at Cal, to talk about my leadership journey. Want to once again thank Dean Astor for giving the opportunity for me to come, share my experiences and be back with you here today. But just before I begin, I am a diehard Cal alum who still bleeds blue and gold. Just this past weekend, I was up marching on the field at Memorial Stadium with the Cal Band for Alumni Band Day. And yes, exactly. So I really can't express how much it really means to be back on campus with you all here today. So it's really phenomenal. And by the way, what a great outcome to the game. Go Bears. So Cal has had many much more notable alumni and faculty than I. And as you've all likely heard many discussions around career growth and leadership in the past. But my hope is to leave you with another perspective, with some vulnerability baked in, that you may be able to use to achieve your personal objectives. To do that, I'd like to take you on a journey to how I became both a civilian executive at 4 different companies and the deputy commander at U.S. Third Fleet, which just happens to be the largest numbered fleet in the U.S. Navy. But before I begin, I must just give the standard disclaimer that all of the opinions expressed today are my own and do not necessarily represent the views of the Department of Defense, the Navy, or their components, or an endorsement by the University of California, Berkeley. So with that, let's begin. All right, I'd like you to keep 3 themes in mind as we take this journey beyond the periscope. You can't always chart your own course. A broad and varied background can be an enabler. And perseverance and grit and hard work are necessary, but they're not sufficient. So let's start with the current state, my role as the Deputy Commander at 3rd Fleet, since many of you may not be aware of how the U.S. Navy is organized. U.S. 3rd Fleet is one of the operational maneuver elements in the Pacific under U.S. Pacific Fleet. As a quick aside, and as a connection to UC Berkeley, the U.S. Pacific Fleet is the fleet that Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz commanded during World War II. And Nimitz was the first Navy Reserve Officer Training Corps commanding officer here at Berkeley back in the 1920s. The 3rd Fleet Area of Responsibility, or AOR, covers the Eastern Pacific, from the west coast of the United States to the international date line about 6,000 miles to the west, from pole to pole, from seabed to space, and everything in between. We have nearly 70,000 people, both uniform and civilian, that operate and support 5 aircraft carriers, about a little over 100 ships and submarines, and over 400 aircraft. The 3rd Fleet is the largest numbered fleet, and as the Deputy Commander, I serve as the 2nd in command. So that's me now, but where did it all begin? So it started back here at Cal in 1989, where I was a mechanical engineering student. I actually started in Air Force ROTC as an Air Force ROTC cadet, but a little too much studying my freshman year resulted in my vision deteriorating, and I realized that flying in the Air Force was likely not going to be in the cards. Fortunately, I saw the light. Or you might say I saw the Trenkov radiation for the nuclear power devotees in the room, and I became aware of the Navy's Nuclear Power Officer Candidate Program, or NUPOC program, and was selected to be a Navy submariner. And while actually initially somewhat disappointing, since I had had my heart set on flying, it actually turned out to be a great change for me. Besides the submarine nuclear Navy being a great fit for me due to its technical focus, it also made my time at Cal much more fulfilling. The NUPOC program provided me money for school, room and board, and other expenses, but required that I only continue to go to class and study and get good grades. As such, it opened up a large amount of bandwidth in my schedule to let me engage more with the university. As I alluded to earlier, I was in the Cal Band, which is where I met my wife of now over 30 years. I fenced epee. I was a member of the Senior Class Council, helping to create, at the time, the first university-wide convocation in decades, which has now become the graduation. And of course, I was able to study. So this was my first course change. All right. To be a submariner, you need to attend about 1.5 years of additional school after graduation to study nuclear engineering, learn how to operate a nuclear power plant, and learn the tactical employment of a submarine. And since I was a NUPOC, I also needed to go to officer candidate school to get my commission. Following that schooling, I reported to my submarine, a first flight Los Angeles class submarine, the USS Portsmouth, SSN 707 in San Diego. We were very operational. I completed 2 deployments, one to the Persian or Arabian Gulf with the Nimitz Battle Group, now called Strike Groups, and one as an independent deployer to the Western Pacific. Following my junior officer or JOC tour, I had the opportunity to come back to Cal to teach Navy ROTC for shore duty. I was also able to get my master's in mechanical engineering. My major advisor was Professor Lisa Pruitt, whom some of you may have also had the great opportunity to take classes from or work with in her lab. Like with everything in the Navy, there is a mini sea story associated with my return to Cal. Our boat was returning from our 2nd deployment when my next assignment was going to be announced, and I was going to be under the water with no access to communication. So I asked the detailer, that's the person that assigns your next job, if my wife could call and find out where I was going to go for my next assignment. He said, sure. So on our return to home port, I just happened to be the officer of the deck, or OOD. This is the officer responsible for all the operations of the ship. And on a submarine, the officer of the deck is on the bridge when on the surface. So the bridge is atop the sail. That's the part that back in World War II everybody called the conning tower, the part that sticks up off the hull. And so I was able to see my wife on the pier as we pulled back into port. And there she was on the pier with a sign saying, "We're going to Berkeley." Great opportunity. Having had a very successful JO tour, I vacillated about staying on active duty. The choice was about going back to sea as a department head or entering the civilian workforce. I had extensive leadership experience from my time as a JO on the submarine, leading 3 different divisions responsible for the operations and maintenance of a $2 billion submarine. I had a brand new master's degree from Cal, worth every penny, And I saw a booming economy just prior to the 2000 dot-com bubble burst. It was a very hard choice because of my experience in the Navy was highly rewarding. But I made my first hard career choice and started on my civilian career path as a vehicle engineer at Ford Motor Company in Michigan. However, because of my phenomenal experiences in the Navy, I also converted to the Navy Reserve to remain connected. That was my next course change. Ford was a great experience. After a year there, I was selected into the Ford's first product development leadership program class, a rotational program designed to make future product development executives. I also began an evening MBA at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. Ford also gave me the opportunity to really learn the art and science of product development, to become a practitioner of the processes to take ideas from the fuzzy front end of innovation to the delivery of a final product or vehicle or solution to a customer. I was also able to build my engineering and operations leadership experience by contributing to the entire end-to-end process. This leadership experience culminated in my role as the strategy supervisor of the Super Duty pickup line. That's the F-250 to F-550. Leading the efforts for all Ford model planning for the most profitable vehicle line at Ford. During the time at Ford, I was also continuing my Navy Reserve career supporting submarine and other Navy operations in the 6th Fleet area of responsibility, which is from the tip of Greenland to the east to the west coast of Europe and Africa, including the Mediterranean. I was able to travel to Italy multiple times and to the UK. Not too bad for a part-time role. My MBA, my Navy leadership experience, and my product development leadership experience at Ford eventually led me to my next course change, to a role as a management consultant back in California, helping companies in the life science, automotive, energy, and clean tech space improve their product development processes. I joined a firm called PRTM, which was later acquired by PwC, more on that later. It was an entrepreneurial management consultancy focused on operations strategy for a range of industries and practice areas. Operations strategy is really about helping business operationalize their business strategies to deliver on their objectives. And while at the time I had no intentions of going beyond 20 years in the Navy Reserve, the return to California also gave me the chance to compete for and be selected for my first commanding officer job in the Navy Reserve. I was selected as the commanding officer of Navy Reserve, Navy Submarine Support Center, in San Diego. I thought I should at least keep my options open at the time by commanding a reserve unit, and it did not require too much travel since the role with PRTM took me to Orange County, not that far from San Diego. That was my next course change. The consulting and Navy paths were going great when I received the call. It was 2009, and we were at the height of the global war on terror. I was informed I was going to be recalled to active duty and mobilized in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, the operation in support of our activities in Afghanistan. I was selected to go to the Office of Defense Representative Pakistan, or also known as ODRP, at the embassy in Islamabad. Originally, I was selected for a watch-standing role, but when they found out I was an engineer, they assigned me to lead the infrastructure portion of the Pakistan Counterinsurgency Fund, a $2 billion fund used for training and equipping the Pakistan military in support of their internal efforts to defeat violent extremist organizations and insurgents. I was responsible for all infrastructure development for training facilities for the Pakistan military. Mobilized and away from home and other obligations, for example, the civilian job was on hold, the family wasn't with me, etc., ODRP became a place of opportunity. It gave me the opportunity to engage with the interagency, that's the other elements of our government, such as the State Department, our three-letter agencies like the FBI and CIA. Specifically, the ODRP staff did not have experience managing a $2 billion fund. It had typically operated on a much smaller security assistant budget. Being a management consultant who had built multiple project management offices, or PMOs, for companies, I volunteered to build out a PMO to manage the prioritization, allocation, and management of the funds to achieve ODRP strategic objectives. Similarly, when there was a need to put in structure and a metrics-driven approach to better assess ODRP and the Chief of Mission progress against the US political military strategy, I volunteered to build out the assessment process and tools for the Paul Mill strategy. Finally, I participated in the Exchange on Defense Planning, an effort by the Departments of State and Defense to obtain multi-year security assistance funds for Pakistan, similar to how we have funded Israel and Egypt in the past. Although I was backbenching at the event, I was, to paraphrase the musical Hamilton, in the room where it happened, with the two long tables with the Pakistan senior officials on one side and the US senior officials on the other. It's like I was in a movie. It was an absolute incredible experience and opportunity. This was my next course change. As I was planning for my return from my mobilization, I needed to figure out what was next for the Navy. Recall that my original intention was to retire at 20 years, and I would be about 6 months shy of my 20 upon my return from Pakistan. I'd also been promoted to PRTM, or to principal at PRTM, that's the management consultancy firm I worked at, just prior to my mobilization to Pakistan, so it would have been easy just to continue my Navy retirement plans and focus only on my civilian career. But my time in Pakistan actually had a major impact on me, and it had changed some of my priorities regarding my Navy career. I was a junior commander at the time, but I thought maybe I could serve a few more years and potentially make captain. So I applied for another commanding officer tour and was selected as the CEO of the Navy Reserve USS Frank Cable, a submarine tender in Guam. It was a great role leading 8 other units and about 200 Navy Reserve personnel in support of the Frank Cable. I was excited to have the opportunity to lead at the next level, and that was my next course change. On the civilian side, I was also making some course changes. The management consultancy I worked for, which was a relatively small entrepreneurial firm, was acquired by PwC, a much larger firm. PwC was and remains a well-respected firm, but for me, this larger, more accounting-focused firm did not feel like a good cultural fit. The change required some soul-searching. Should I stay with PwC and continue on the path to partner there, or should I make a change? I decided to return to industry. I was fortunate to be hired as the VP of Engineering at a division of L3, now L3 Harris. This transition back into industry is my first example of the importance of networking. I had seen the position online, and when I applied, I was told that I was not a good fit for the role. A few months later, I noted that the position was still posted. The specific division had not been listed in the original posting, but I was able to ascertain the information from the recruiter when they rejected me the first time. As it turned out, I happened to know the CTO at the division through the Navy Reserve, and I reached out to him to find out more about the role. He put my resume in front of the president, who said I was a perfect fit, and after a few rounds of interviewing with the balance of the executive team, I was offered the role. Let me emphasize, networking is important. The division I worked for made the electrical power conversion equipment for the Virginia-class submarine, among some other equipment. And while I was there, we also won the contract for the development of the power conversion equipment for the new Columbia-class Ohio replacement. This power conversion equipment consists of large inverters and converters that ranged from a few hundred kilowatts to a few megawatts, changing power from AC to DC, DC to AC, and DC to DC. These systems are used aboard our ships and submarines, but they are also used in the critical renewable energy space and electric mobility industries. This was my next course change. Here, the course changes start to accelerate, so hold on a little bit. Despite the success at L3, where I nearly doubled the engineering department to 140 plus engineers and increased our profitability by 11,000 basis points, I was given the unique opportunity and recruited to join an advanced nuclear power startup, a company named Kairos Power. Kairos is developing a fluoride lithium beryllium salt-cooled high-temperature reactor. Coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, the 3 founders of Kairos Power were all connected to Cal. 2 received their PhDs in nuclear engineering from Cal, and the third was a longtime Cal nuclear engineering professor and prior chair of the department. This was my next course change. At Kairos, I helped to grow the company to put in place structure and processes, and to drive the early strategy and market research to determine the power conversion cycle. I eventually became the chief operating officer. But as with many early startups, my time at Kairos did not work out. You have to be willing to fall if you're going to take some leaps. But as painful as it can be, it's important to get up, brush yourself off, and move on. I went on from there to join 2 other startups, both in the artificial intelligence space, as the head of operations. Now you may ask, how does a nuclear-trained mechanical engineer end up at an AI company? This is another example of networking. When my time at Kairos was coming to an end, I reached out to my broad-based network that I had developed as a management consultant. A contact that I had met at a clean tech conference was connected to a partner at a VC firm who needed some product development consulting support. I did some independent work for the VC firm, and they connected me to the CEO of an AI computer vision company that needed an operations leader to bring systems engineering and operations rigor to the organization. The operations leadership at the one AI company led to the opportunity to lead operations at the second AI company. It was another example of networking being critical to future opportunities. The next course change. During the time at L3, Kairos, and the two AI companies, I continued to serve in the Navy Reserve. I had 3 other commanding officer or CO tours. One additional CO tour as a commander leading the U.S. Third Fleet Reserve Headquarters Unit, after which I was selected for captain, and then 2 as a captain, one leading the lead submarine reserve unit for Commander Submarine Forces U.S. Pacific Fleet, which was also dual-hatted as Commander Task Force 34, the Theater Undersea Warfare Commander for Third Fleet, and one as the vice commander of Commander Navy Forces Korea, leading all Navy reserve support to the Korean Peninsula, and where I had the chance to work for Vice Admiral Mike Bonds Boyle when he was a 1-star, which will be relevant later. I was also fortunate to have the opportunity to serve in 2 post-major command tours. One as the Deputy Commander for Readiness and Mobilization Command Fort Worth, providing senior reserve component leadership throughout an entire region, and one as the Commander for the Navy Emergency Preparedness Liaison Officer, or NEPLO program, which is the leader for the senior officers, primarily 06s or Navy captains, who coordinate with FEMA for Defense Support of Civil Authorities, or DISCA. I thought that would be my last assignment, but I was honored to receive a call from the Chief of Navy Reserve, or CNR, about 3 months into my role as the NEPLO program commander, saying I had been selected for Rear Admiral, or typically referred to as Flag, since you become what's known as a flag officer. Later that year, the CNR informed me I would be going to Third Fleet as the deputy commander. It was an absolute dream assignment. My wife was sitting next to me when the CNR made the announcement. My wife and I like to take long walks, and during the walks, we had speculated where I might go. The typical role for a new submarine reserve flag officer as the deputy for Commander Submarine Forces. But in my class, we had selected 3 submarine officers, which is absolutely unheard of, and a story for another time. One of my classmates knew he was going to support a special project at Naval Forces Europe and 6th Fleet, but the other 2 of us did not know where we would be going. So on this walk, I had mentioned to my wife that Vice Admiral Boyle was now the commander at 3rd Fleet. Recall I asked you to take note that I had worked for Vice Admiral Boyle when he was the commander of Naval Forces Korea. I shared with my wife that it would be an incredible opportunity if I could go back and work for him again at a numbered fleet, but I brushed it off as nearly impossible. The incumbent in the job and most prior deputies at 3rd Fleet had been in the role as their 2nd flag officer tour. But there I sat as the CNR was announcing where each of us would be going, and when he got to me, he said, "Rich, you're going to 3rd Fleet. Fonz remembers you fondly and is looking forward to you coming aboard." My wife squeezed my leg. We glanced at each other and shared an unspoken spark of delight with the announcement. This was my next course change. Fundamentally, the deputy at 3rd Fleet was a great fit. I had served as the CO of one of the 3rd Fleet Reserve units. I had served as the CO of the lead reserve submarine unit that serves as 3rd Fleet's undersea warfare commander. I had served as the commander for the NEPLO program, leading DISCA, a key mission area of 3rd Fleet. And I had served with the then current commander when he was at Commander Navy Forces Korea. All of those opportunities were somewhat fate-driven. They had not all been charted, but resulted from being ready for the next opportunity. So this brings me back to my 3 points. The course charted is not always where you end up, or maybe more accurately, you can't always chart your course. So be nimble, agile, and flexible. At times in my life, I tried to plan both my Navy and civilian career paths, but the world got a vote and changed the course I was on. Fundamentally, I did not get to pick the path, but the journey has been a great ride. A broad and varied background can be an enabler, so be a lifelong learner. In both the Navy and my civilian life, my varied experiences have been an enabler. As an engineer and nuclear qualified submarine officer, I often like to be an expert, to have deep knowledge of the subject. But as you become more senior and have a larger span of responsibility, having expertise on everything becomes challenging, frankly, impossible. More importantly, however, having a broad-based knowledge has actually been fundamental in the product development space, where I have spent much of my civilian career delivering new products to customers. Here it is critical to engage and lead cross-functional teams, weaving together the functional expertise and knowledge of each individual team member. Perseverance, grit, and hard work, while important and necessary, are not sufficient. So be humble and grateful for the opportunities you receive. I did not dive into this topic in great detail when discussing my journey, but some of those course changes often felt like disappointments at the time. Someone had moved my cheese, and now I needed to start over. Each time I buckled down and worked hard, gritted it out to ideally get the next opportunity. But this was not sufficient. I shared that I was fortunate to have had a great network contact. Amazingly, someone who I'd met at only a conference, who was willing to make a connection. I've had great teammates who leaned in to support me and where I was looking to take my command, my department, or company. My family has supported me at every turn, making huge sacrifices due to my significant absences, whether that was when I was deployed or when I was traveling for work. Bottom line, it is important to remain humble and grateful since we do not get anywhere on our own. I've been building this slide as I've been sharing my journey. It can be viewed in different ways. As a sailor, you can look at this as a boat tacking upwind with a course in mind. Well, apropos, especially for a naval officer, I don't think that the sailing metaphor necessarily tells the whole story. I like to think of it more of a mountain trek. Each leg is a switchback on the trail to get to the summit. But there is not only one mountain. There is a mountain range. So we cannot stop at one summit. We must be prepared to continue to trek onward across the mountain range from summit to summit. I look forward to my next leg on this mountain journey. Thanks for listening to my journey beyond the periscope.
Take a seat here. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of a chat now, and then we'll have some time for Q&A left at the end. So thank you, Admiral Meyer. That was very inspiring. We had a few of us in the audience had seen part of this story and had found it really inspiring, which led to the invitation today. So I hope all of you enjoyed it. So the first question, I have a few questions here, and we'll go for about 10 minutes and open up to questions. So as you kind of think about all of the different steps you've taken in rising through the ranks, both civilian and in the military, what challenges, really stand out, and how did you overcome them?
Well, some of the story that we just heard, I would say, kind of articulate some of those challenges. I think that, for the most part, not being able to know everything that's going to happen in your life is probably one of the more challenging things that you kind of run into, where you think that you're heading in a particular direction, and then something happens to adjust from that standpoint. I shared the examples of where I was on a path within senior leadership roles within an organization. The organization took a different turn, and the next thing I knew, I had to be looking for something else. So I think what's important is to be able to remain flexible in those circumstances, to rely back on not just your own experiences, but that of your network, and reach back out and be willing to be vulnerable enough to ask for help when you run into those challenges. And I found that to be one of the most meaningful things as I've progressed through my career. I also alluded to the fact that you need to do it with others. As an executive or just a leader in general, you're doing that with your team, right? You're doing that on part and parcel with others, and you're not doing any of it on your own. You really are. The vast majority of the work is being done by others. So really being respectful and gracious for the activities that those other individuals do is really important. Thanking them, being appreciative of that work, and knowing that they're going to be the ones that are helping you get to that next level.
Thank you. So you've had an amazing career of leadership. So you've led people in all kinds of contexts throughout the military and, again, civilian career. So, maybe to the students, and to all of us, what's the most important lesson you've learned about leading people?
Everybody's different. I think that it's important to understand that every single person is an individual, and that what's going to motivate them or drive them is going to be different than what's going to motivate you or the next person that you're talking to. So really taking that to heart, getting to know your people, getting to know what actually is motivating them, since just the fact that you've been trying to do certain things with your own career or throughout your own life may not resonate with them. So really understanding the things that are important to them is going to be helpful from a leadership perspective. So from there, it's really then enabling them to be part of a team. So we don't get anywhere on our own. If you want to go, you've probably heard the comment before, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. And that's really true, right? So being able to engage with them, help to shape what the vision is for where the organization is trying to go, and then help them to feel how their individual part, whether they're the junior sailor or the junior engineer, working in the organization, or the most senior leader, how are they contributing to achieving that particular objective?
Maybe to follow on that a little bit, so in your experience, you've also worked with a lot of leaders. So what have you found that makes an excellent leader, and what experience do you remember most from your time at Berkeley that helped you develop those leadership skills?
So on the first piece, what makes a great leader, at least those that I've looked to and wanted to emulate, those that are the most humble and recognize that they likely have had the help of others to get there. So that they recognize that they're willing to engage others, that they're willing to recognize their own faults and even communicate that, to demonstrate some of that vulnerability to others. It's hard, the more senior you become, to be willing to do that. But those that are comfortable enough in their own skin to be able to say, hey, this didn't go well, or we could have done this better, and being able to recognize that, I think that goes a long way to letting others know that not everything works. There are going to be challenges. Things are going to, we're going to have problems. Let's, when that happens, let's recognize that and move on and get better. With respect to things at Berkeley, I think that Berkeley is a lot about it's changed. I imagine the university has changed substantially since I last was here 25 years ago, and even as an undergrad, even longer ago than that. But I think Berkeley is a lot about perseverance. I found when I was here, just a quick sea story, I didn't get housing my freshman year, so it's like, where am I going to live? So had to persevere through that. Hopefully they've done better about that now, and they're maybe not. So like, you had to go find where you're going to live. Everything's on computer now, but back then, a lot of things were much more manual. So you're standing in some giant line, out of Sproul Hall, to go get your ID card. It's like, am I in the right line to actually check in? You never know. Berkeley is a very large school, so you had to be very self-sufficient to be able to figure out how you're going to navigate through the university. That ability to navigate through the challenges of the university actually helped me throughout life, because nobody's here helping you. Nobody's here guiding your way. Yes, you could go over to McLaughlin and they'd say, hey, you need to make sure you're taking these courses. Check, check, check. You're on track to graduate. But in the end of the day, you are accountable for your own success or not, at school here. And I think those skills were really helpful in building that out to be able to continue on in the future.
So this question is a little bit about the future leaders, and it's a rapidly changing environment now. You mentioned AI several times, and just the pace of innovation. So what do you see are the biggest leadership challenges facing today's engineers, and how should they be addressed?
I think you hit on one, is just the rate of change. Things are changing so fast, so it's really hard to know. If we start heading down this path, is something else going to cause the pendulum to swing or something to adjust? I was talking to some of the students that helped organize this before we started. They were all electrical engineering and computer science majors, and I asked how many of them were actually focusing more on the CS side. If I had asked that 10 years ago, probably everyone would have raised their hand focusing on the CS. And most of them had shifted back to more of the hardware focused in their major. The ability to have the flexibility to do that, I think, is key as a future leader, is to be able to demonstrate that you have the adaptability to be able to say, hey, the winds are changing, I need to be able to move. And that doesn't mean blow with the winds, right? If you have a clear objective, if you think about some of probably the greatest entrepreneurs out there, they knew where they wanted to go, they knew what they wanted to deliver. The NVIDIA CEO has been working on that forever, right? So it didn't just happen yesterday. He's been slowly building that company until his chip became now the power behind most of the AI solutions out there. But the idea that you have to be able to be flexible enough to adapt as the environment changes around you is very important. So keeping that in mind, continuing, as I said, to be a lifelong learner is very important as you're going to be a new leader. And then understand that as the next generation comes behind you and you're starting to get a little gray on the side or losing your hair, as clearly in my case, recognize that new cohort of people coming behind you bring a lot of new things to bear. Learn from them, understand what they have to bring, because they're going to be bringing a lot of thoughts that you didn't even think about. So really engage with that next cohort to understand how you could potentially do things better.
These have been great perspectives. So, we're in the business here at Berkeley of training the next generation of engineering leaders. And, if you think about our role as educators, what do you see as our responsibility to ensure that we are producing that next generation of leaders and workforce?
So it's a great question. I've had this discussion or argument, how you want to frame it, with others. What I found most beneficial from my academic experience, and I hope it's still true today, was actually the first principles focus base of Berkeley. Really understanding the foundation behind why things work, not just here's how to get an answer. I think that a lot of the university has started to develop a lot more hands-on things, which I think is great. I think that was probably not so much the case when I was an undergrad. So bringing those two things to bear, understand the foundational principles, the first principles, the why, because that can take you anywhere. At the same time, understand the practical aspects that you're going to be asked to deliver the second that you walk into the workplace and somebody says, hey, I need you to go deliver and build this or create this. So the composition or the connection of those two things is very key. And I think Berkeley's evolved to do a lot of those things very, very well. And I think that's a testament to the university.
Well, great, thank you. We made it through our prepared questions, and we have about 10 minutes left for some questions from the audience, and we'd like to give priority to the students. And we would ask that if you would like to ask a question, maybe to come down to one of the microphones. That way we don't have to chase you down with our own handheld microphone. So. Oh, you will pass? Okay, all right. If you can come down, fine. If not, we'll pass one. Okay, questions for the Admiral?
Hello. Oh, the mic works.
Right.
Hi, I'm Samdrea. I'm president of Pioneers in Engineering, who we are helping out with the event today, guarding the food out there. I'm from San Diego, so when you mentioned that you were stationed in San Diego for a little bit, that was pretty close to home. I went to San Diego Miramar College, so very close to Miramar Base, which I wasn't sure if you were there. My question is more about leadership, so another one of the topic. I was wondering what was the main driving force for becoming commanding officer and taking those leadership roles in the workplace? Like what did you feel was the quality that you possessed that you were confident and wanted to pursue all these leadership roles and thinking that you can, believing in yourself that you can succeed in the role?
Well, thanks for that question. We are not located by Miramar, by the way. We're down farther in Point Loma, but Miramar has the Marine Corps base. But anyway.
I see. Oh, okay. My fault.
That's all good. So what drove me to want to become a commanding officer or take on different leadership roles? It was really the opportunity to influence the decision making. I found, from the very beginning. So in the case of, becoming a junior officer on board, you're instantly thrown into a role where you're having to lead others. You're very junior. You have some senior enlisted personnel who are instrumental because they have a lot of experience in helping to guide you. But ultimately, you're accountable for what's going on within your sphere of influence, the division. And I relish this opportunity to say, hey, I'm in charge of this, I'm responsible for making it happen, and I can help to make it better. I can help to make the lives better of folks. A quick sea story, again, that's all the Navy has is sea stories. So I had just become the damage control assistant, which on a submarine is also responsible for the auxiliary division, which are the non-nuclear qualified machinist mates. So I had been the chemistry and radiological, can't even say that, chemistry and radiological controls assistant, which is in charge of the water chemistry and the radiation health monitoring on the ship. I've been the main propulsion assistant, which is in charge of all the nuclear machinery on board. And then this last division, I was made the assistant engineer and became the QAO and the damage control assistant, in charge of the non-nuclear machinery on board. And that division had been known for just being brute force. They were going to be the first people on the ship, the last people off every day, just killing themselves all the time. It's like, well, this isn't great. This isn't a great way. It's like you're at sea all the time. You come back. You never see your family. I wanted to get them home. I wanted them to see more of their families. And part of the challenges was how they were managing and controlling their work. They would come in, but they wouldn't be ready to go. So a lot of the beginning of the day was, doing all the prep work. So they really weren't getting started with things until maybe, noon, because they had to go get something. You had to tag out a system, which is a way to make sure that nobody gets hurt. And so they weren't ready with all that preparatory work in advance. I said, well, we're at sea all the time. Why don't we do all that work while we're at sea? So when we come to port, all that's done, and we can be the first people to start the work any particular day. They started doing that, and they started going home early. Not as early as the sonar techs, but they started going home a lot earlier, which was great for them. Much improved quality of life. And so that particular example made me say, hey, if I can make this group of people's lives better, what can I do for others? And it just really kind of built from there.
That's really impactful. Thank you.
My question is also about leadership, and also kind of like to get to the place that you must have had your pulse on kind of where industry's going, and also learn from your mentors along the way. So what's one piece of advice, or maybe a piece of media, a book, that has really impacted the way that you thought and how you've pursued your career?
So I'll start with the book, because that's probably the easier answer. So there's a good book out there that it's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It's really, it's a pretty short read. It's a management book, but it talks all about how each phase of your life you'll learn something, you'll go do that, and you'll be successful, and then you'll get promoted to go do the next thing. But the things that made you successful in your last job, so let's say you were the technical expert, right? So oftentimes we take our best technical engineers and we promote them into management jobs, and then they struggle because they weren't prepared to be a manager of other engineers. They were the best, the best engineer, but not necessarily the best manager. So how can we actually ensure that they're going to be successful managers? Well, we gave them tons and tons of training to be engineers. We need to give them very good training to be great managers as well. So that's very important also. And so this book kind of talks through that idea about how at each stage of your career, as you progress to that next level, reflect on what got you there, but think about what's necessary to make you successful in that role so that you can actually be, doing the job that you've been promoted to. So your other question was just more about general leadership, I guess. So we've talked a little bit about that, in general, and I think, the principles of leadership, are kind of some of the things that I've, alluded to before. Just really, what are the things that first off, you need to be able to set the objective, the mission, where are you trying to take the organization, whether that's your small group of, if you're running, if you're a brand new manager of a group of engineers, what is the objective that you're trying to do? Are you trying to get that group to be more efficient? Are you trying to, take the product to the next level? What is the objective? Making sure that's clear to everybody that's aligned. And then how are you enabling that to occur? As a manager or a leader, your job is to break down barriers for your team. Their job is to get that work done. Your job is to make it easier for them to get that work done. So think about how you can do that. Think about the things that are necessary so that they can be more effective and be happier about their contributions. And then recognize them to the utmost extreme. They're doing a lot of hard work, and that recognition piece is key. When I joined L3, as the VP of engineering, we had a history of many, many red programs. Consistently programs that had been behind schedule and way over budget. Not a good way to run a business. And my charter was to change that. And to go about doing that, first of all was using a lot of incorporating a lot of more engineering-focused approaches. A lot of things that had been done in the past were more trial and error, which isn't really engineering, right? We should be able to be more predictive, whether that's through first principles calculations or modeling and simulation. I would actually, because I'm a mechanical engineer, when I would interview mechanical engineers, I'd ask them to do a simple beam problem on the whiteboard to see if they could actually calculate the stresses. They didn't have to get the exact question right, but could they get through those principles, or could they look at the heat transfer across a series of materials? So I wanted to see if they could think through those first principles. And so we brought those capabilities in, thinking about how we could improve our engineering approach to doing things. But when they adapted and they started to do that stuff, I made sure that we brought about the recognition of the group. We had at L3 as a whole, they had something called an Engineer of the Year, which was like the top 0.1% of the engineers in the entire company. So we started nominating people for that. The time while I was there as the VP of Engineering, 3 of my engineers got selected to be one of those, which is a great testament to the great work that they had done. I was super proud of them. But we also recognized others. We gave other awards within our own division, including a team award, which it was just little acrylic pieces, but each person on the team got an acrylic piece that was part of a puzzle, just to recognize that this team did a great job. It wasn't just the individual, but the whole team was successful in making that thing happen. So it was just a great opportunity to kind of make that difference. So those are a couple examples. I have a question down front here.
Hello, my name is Jaehyun from South Korea.
Hi.
And then my question is, how different the leadership between the military leadership and then the civil side leadership? So since I was a kid, I'm a big fan of the Top Gun and Band of Brothers. So like I like that the military leadership and then adapting to myself. But before I'm transfer student. But before I transfer, when I was leading my rocket club, I felt sometimes my officer feel like my leadership is kind of like bossy or something like that. So how, from your military to the civil side, how did you adapt your leadership to that?
Yeah, great question. So I would say that directly coming from my time when I was on active duty as a JO, rolling into my first civilian job, that was probably the hardest time I had making some of those cultural adjustments. A little bit more command and control, which kind of more top down when I was a JO. And I realized that wasn't going to work in the environment that I was operating in. I needed to be a little bit more collaborative in how to get things done. Try to engage more with others and bring out their ideas and figure out collectively. In the end of the day, I was accountable even when I was leading small teams at Ford. But I needed to elicit more from the broader group to try to get to that. I found that actually worked really well in the Navy too. So this idea of command and control top down, yes, you can do that, but it's not as effective as actually being much more engaging team approach, achieving and accomplishing and working and bringing in the expertise of all the others. There are a lot of really smart people around you, and if you're trying to do all the thinking for them, you're not going to be very successful. But if you say, this is where we need to go, and say, hey, bring me all these great ideas for how we can get there, you're going to be much more successful. So I actually found that to be a much more effective approach both on the civilian side and on the Navy side.
Well, according to the schedule, I'm asked to conclude the talk now, but before I do, let's thank Admiral Meyer, and then we will share a gift with him. So,
Thank you very much. I just want to state again, it's been my absolute pleasure to be with you here today. As I said at the very beginning, I am honored every time I'm back on campus. I just love Berkeley so much. It's just the greatest university around, and each and every one of you that are students here or faculty here or part of the campus and community are lucky to get to be here every single day. So thanks again for letting me be part of it today.
thank you for those kind comments. Go Bears.
Go Bears!
And now they will,
Wow, thank you very much.
a little souvenir so that Berkeley engineering will always be close to your heart, literally.
Awesome.
So.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay, and that concludes today's talk, and we'll be here for a few minutes if anybody has any final questions.